Renault 25, espèce en voie d'apparition.
Hello and welcome to another episode of John's Garage. This week we're going to look at the history of one of Renault's most successful executive models, the Renault 25. So let's jump right on in. Renault's executive range of cars since 1945 has had a very checkered history, and sadly for Renault it has mostly been a case of missed opportunities. Renault has always tried to look to the future and never accepted defeat in this area. Its first two executive models since becoming Régie Nationale, or Nationalised You and Me, were the Frégate and then the Rambler. Neither were a hit on the market, and both were seen as staid and old-fashioned. The psychological impact on Renault was so great that they abandoned the executive market for 10 years, leaving its hugely impressive and competent Renault 16 at the top of the range. In 1975, Renault again entered the executive class with the Renault 20-based 30 range of cars. So close was the Renault 30 in fact to the Renault 20 that only higher trim levels and the PRV V6 set them apart. With the investment spread across two models rather than one, Renault stood a better chance of making a profit, and by producing 136,000 examples of the Renault 30, it did just that. Still, there were signs things weren't all good as the Renault 30 didn't perform great outside of its home market, France. Renault were convinced they could do better, and so in 1977, work began on the replacement for the Renault 20 and 30 with a dedicated executive class model. One of the big challenges Renault had was to produce a model which could compete successfully in European markets and also in the North American market. Renault at this time was a majority stakeholder in AMC Motors, or American Motor Corporation, and was also trying to make inroads into the American market under its own brand. This challenged Renault's thinking and policy of preferring hatchback body styles to conventional saloon models. While executive hatchbacks did well in France, that wasn't the case elsewhere. The decision of which body style to go with would greatly impact the final design for the rear-end treatment of the car, especially the glass area. The body style provided the silhouette of a saloon, but the large rear glass area allowed for the practicality of a hatchback. The final design choice for hatchback was made in early 1980 by Robert Opron, then chief designer at Renault. The interior design by Marcello Gandini was signed off in 1981 also. It was felt that the compromise design offered the best of both types of body style. The Renault 25 was previewed in December 1983 and finally unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show in 1984. As was important to buyers at the time, the drag coefficient of 0.29 for the TS model was briefly the best in the market. 1984 also saw the release of the Alpine GTA and the Espace for Renault, neither of which were expected to be huge sellers, so a lot was riding on the success of the Renault 25, which offered practical and alternative designs to the usual German offerings. The Renault 25 was also arriving into the French market at an ideal time, with competitors' cars being discontinued like the Talbot Turcora, looking old when new such as the Peugeot 604, or actually being old like the Citroën CX. The engine range was varied to appeal to as many buyers as possible. It included the 8-valve 2-litre Duvrin 4-cylinder engines, initially offered with carburetors and then later with electronic ignition. There was also a 2.2-litre variant of this engine offered. The large PRV V6 2.7-litre engine was also offered with 12 valves from 1985 and with a 2.5-litre V6 turbo producing 182 horsepower. Finally, for high mileage users, a 2.1-litre turbo diesel was offered. And finally, Julia's produced a limousine version of the Renault 25 for presidential services. As would be expected, this wasn't a commercial success and was quickly discontinued in 1986. The Renault 25 began life with good sales figures, despite the odd strike soon after production began in 1984 at the Sandouville factory. By the end of the first half of 1986, the 300,000 copy of the Renault 25 was produced. However, all wasn't good. While the mechanical side of things was rock solid, using tried and tested components, the same cannot be said of the electronics. The Renault 25 was plagued by electrical issues. And I suppose briefly it did answer the question, do Renault build a better car? Unfortunately in this case maybe not. This was a problem which Renault never really got on top of and which would stick in customers' minds for years to come. By 1988, the 25 was starting to date. Its transatlantic voyage had been cut short when Renault sold AMC to Chrysler, and sales outside of France in general hadn't lived up to expectations. Even the president of Renault, Raymond Levey, complained about the quality issues with his own 25, which he said had to go back to the garage once a month due to electrical problems. With new competitors on the way from Peugeot and Citroën in the form of the 605 and XM, it was time to give the big Renault a facelift. Renault launched the restyled Renault 25 in June 1988, with much emphasis being placed on its improved reliability. The Renault 25 Phase 2 refreshed the bonnet line of the car with a bonnet extending over the grille, which was also modified. The rear end received new lights, abandoning the bevel cut to become smooth and display two colours, red and black. I personally think this was the beginning of French car designs excelling when it came to rear end design, at least in the 1990s anyway. Renault also took this opportunity to unveil the hugely luxurious Baccarat trim level, and also to give the V6 fuel injection, bringing power to 204 horsepower. On February 13, 1992, production of the Renault 25 came to an end. In total, 779,687 examples had been produced. Was it a successful model Renault had planned it to be? That depends on how you define success. Production figures were significantly better than the Renault 20 and 30 it replaced. However, it only sold in limited numbers outside of France. Either way, what followed in the Safran, the quirky Velsatis, and indeed the sharply styled Talisman would never achieve similar production numbers again. Thank you very much for joining us at John's Garage this week, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe and comment underneath the video. It would be great to hear your thoughts on the Renault 25. Thank you all very much. Bye bye.